3D Hermey acrylic nail art tutorial by Hotpinkzebrapolish. Hi everyone! In today's video I'm going to be doing Hermey, so this is the second of my Rudolph themed designs. I did Rudolph yesterday and I will be uploading the Abominable Snowman probably tomorrow. So I hope you like these, and don't forget to click subscribe to see my future videos and Christmas designs as well. So just like with the other two, I'm going to start with a background of a nice metallic silver. So like I said with Rudolph, which was yesterday's video, and there is a link to that in the description box below, I like to do the silver background because I thought it would go well with all three of them. When you're looking at a background color, and I've mentioned this in previous videos, but I'm just going to mention it again because it is so very important. For a background color, you want to make sure that it is something that's going to contrast well with your other with the colors that are going to go on top. Now that's circumstantial, of course, but generally speaking, especially with something that's like a character like this, you want to make sure that it's not the same. So if you look at a color wheel, you want to make sure that your colors are on the opposite sides of it, which isn't always easy to say because like gray is not on the color wheel, whereas silver is a gray type color. So if you're doing bright colors, gray or darker colors like a charcoal are going to look really nice. Than if you were doing brighter colors. And that same thing goes with if you're doing darker colors, maybe a brighter background color like a white or a cream, if you aren't doing opposite colors like blue and orange. So then you're also going to want to make sure that you add a clear layer of acrylic over the top of the silver to protect it from filing, and then file it. When you file silver acrylic, you're going to file off the metallic particles, leaving it just sort of a gray color, which isn't really as pretty as you are probably hoping it will be. So just make sure that there's enough clear on there that you're not going to file through all of it. And so now I'm going to be sculpting my Hermey. So I began with white acrylic just as a base, just to start with a clean slate for his flesh tone. Especially my cover pink, I've used a couple different ones. The one I'm using right now doesn't seem to have, it's not quite as opaque as some of the others, and so I definitely need to add a layer of white underneath it, or you're going to see the background color through the cover pink, and then he's not going to look quite right. He's going to look a little bit bruised or gray. And maybe if he's cold, that would work, but I don't know. No, just put the white underneath. It's probably a better choice. And so the white, you're going to have to add just sort of an oval for his head. At the top of his head, it doesn't have to be a smooth line or anything because we're going to be adding a hat and hair, and that'll cover it up. And then a neck underneath it, and then an ear on each side. And make sure that you definitely add his ears that are prominent because, like mine, they stick out straight to the sides of his head. One of the wonderful traits I gained from my father. And so then I'm going to be adding a layer of cover pink over Hermey. And so, like I said, mine isn't nearly as opaque as some. There's different levels of cover pink. And if you have, say, like a beige color that's not a cover pink, but it's actually just a beige acrylic, you could use that instead. For actually doing nail beds, I like the sort of mid opacity. I think that leaves a really nice appearance because when it's thick enough for a nail bed, it's towards the smile line where it's thicker there because of the apex. It doesn't show anything through it, but then at the cuticle it fades really nicely and naturally, showing a little bit more of like your lanula. So then you're going to add his ears. And then after you have both those ears in place, you're just going to need to add his neck. So just add a little more cover pink over that. And so the areas that are thinner on here are going to appear a little bit brighter just because that cover is a little less thick, so more of the white is going to show through. So his ears and his neck might appear slightly brighter, but that is okay with me. I think it looks fine. It separates them a little bit too. So then I added his hat, which is going to be a blue triangle, and it is actually a triangle. If you watched my Rudolph video, you may have noticed that I'm having shape commitment issues this evening. When I do editing and I do the nails, I do a whole bunch of them at the same time. So I'll spend a day doing 8 acrylic designs, and then over the next couple days I'll edit them, and then I'll do all the voiceovers on one night. I think I work better that way in sort of a, I don't know, conveyor belt method. So I do all of one part, then all of the next part, and I just save the videos. And so I've done these voiceovers on the same night. Recently, I haven't been able to do that as much because my computer is so full of video footage for all my Christmas designs that I can't edit too much at one time. But I still like to do a couple at a time. It's easier. So I'm having issues with my shapes this evening. So then I'm going to be adding a band of red acrylic across Hermey's hat. this particular step you could do just about any point in time along the way, and if you'd like to, you could have done this at the end with paint instead of with acrylic if that's easier. It won't have the dimensional quality, but for that little bit it wouldn't matter. And then I'm going to be adding his hair with yellow, and I would say his hair is probably the most difficult part of this design, especially where it sort of swoops up and it comes to a nice little point, but it waves a little bit before that. That part can seem a little tricky just to make it look right. So I started with the opposite side, and I just added that little bit of hair that's parted. So I did it from the part and then going towards his ear, and then I'll go from the part going to his other ear. And so, like I said, his hair has a nice little wave to it. So you want to do the first section. It goes in 3. And a lot of the depth of that actually comes with the paint later on. So if it looks still flat at this point, don't worry too much about it, because like I said, it will come eventually if you shade it correctly with the orange paint at the end. So there's the first section, and then here's the second section of his hair. So it kind of goes up and then down, and then it comes back up. And so here is that last little bit. So this is going to kind of come up to a point. So little ends of his hair there that curl up. So you could have done this in one bead, or attempted to do this in one bead, and then pushed it into the right shapes and adjusted it and added the little lines. Maybe with a silicone tool that could be a way to do it, maybe, if you like using silicone tools. I'm getting to where I like them more and more. When I first got them, it seemed a little hinky to me, but I've used them some more recently, and I do like them. So if you like those, then you could maybe have done that with that. I like to do things in small little bits at a time, and do one piece and then get another bead and do that, and just I don't mind doing something in a whole bunch of different beads. Generally speaking, I have the time, but if you're in a salon and you do need to speed up processes, definitely could have done his hair, that section with the little swoop, in one bead instead of doing it in 3 like I did. So then I also added his nose in the center, well, it's not the center of his face, but close to the center of his face, you know, nose location. And then I added his elf suit. So I just added a bead of blue down, the same color as his hat, and then I pressed it up to his neck. Once again, the very top where his neck is, you don't have to make sure that that line is perfect. You don't want to be crazy and accurate, but it doesn't have to be flawless because we're going to be adding a collar. But then I just took my brush, and I dragged a line down the center to create, because it's 2 sides, it kind of goes on in like a coat. And so then if you do that, it makes it look like it can be separated. And then with 2 beads of white, I'm going to be adding the collar to his elf shirt, like I mentioned. And so they're in 2 sections, 1 on each side. And this is where, like I said, it didn't have to be perfect, because even if it was, you'd be covering it up anyway. And so just add those 2 little bits, making sure that you leave sort of a triangle in the center of them so they look like they're separated in the same location where that little line was. So now I'm going to detail his hair, and like I said before, this is really an important step to make sure that it has the right appearance. So I'm going to be taking some orange, and I'm going to be adding all of the little shadows or the low lights to it. And when you're doing hair, if you're actually doing hair on a person, but if you're painting or doing hair in an art sense, then you want to make sure that you always use little dashed lines. That's going to make it look a little bit better. So instead of doing just a whole bunch of like a blob, do it in a little lines. It'll make it look hairier. This is a hairy situation we have ourselves in. And then using a very light pastel yellow, I'm going to be highlighting it. So very little of the actual yellow acrylic that I did in the beginning is showing through. Most of it is being covered up by orange or pastel yellow paint, but there is bits that do show through, so you want to make sure that you do have that yellow on there as a base. So now using brown paint, I'm going to be doing some little outlines here and there, outlining his hair, under his nose, making sure that shows up really well. Just all those little things, not too much outlining, just a little bit. And now I'm going to be painting his eyes with white paint. And so I'm just going to start out with those, and they are ovals. And so right above his nose is where those are going to be. And as you can see, I got a little bit of white paint on his nose. It happens. So there's the first eye. And eyes seem to be one of the harder things for me to paint, just to make them symmetrical or even from side to side, because generally speaking, you want them to be. There are certain things like perspective where one will be smaller than the other, but in most circumstances, you want them to be close to the same. And so if you paint the eyes first and then you do outlines, you can sometimes fix it with the outlines. And if you do the outlines first and then you fill them in, if the outlines aren't right, you can adjust them there and then fix it with the inside. So my whole point of this story here is if you don't feel like your eyes are right in the beginning, know that there are opportunities to adjust and fix them later on to make them so that you're happy with them. So don't get too discouraged in the beginning if they seem like they're a little uneven. So then I also added his smile with red, and then I outlined his eyes with brown, and then I'm going to be adding his pupils with black. Just like that. And then with black again, I'm going to be adding his eyebrows. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but I did this with the Grinch as well. The Grinch, Cindy Lou Who, and all of these Rudolph characters, there isn't nearly as many steps to them and it's not as much video footage. And so I did take more time in the video. So I didn't necessarily take more time, but instead of speeding, usually I speed up my acrylic videos to 4 times. That's generally my go-to. It's a speed I like when I'm watching other people's videos, so generally that is what I do use. But for these 5 videos, I decided to go with something a little more slow-paced, and so they are only at 2 times the speed. So I hope you like that for these and get a little bit more in-depth look. And I also, just so that you know what I did, I put matte top coat over the top of Hermey and a glossy gel sealer over the background and cured that, and then that is it. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to check out the other 2 designs when they are ready. There'll be links in the description box, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!